Hello and welcome back. We're continuing the Bible Jesus read by Philip Yancey. We're in chapter 3, Deuteronomy, a taste of bittersweet. So here we go. Keep it positive, old man, he mumbles to himself. Remember, this is your big day. Don't take it away from them. It was their parents who angered God, not these kids here today. And give them hope. Let them celebrate. Try as he might, he cannot help lashing out. Footsore and weary as he thinks back over the last third of his life, all he feels is disappointment. You are too heavy a burden for me to carry alone, he says, and waits for the shouters to repeat it. Well, it's true. They are a burden. A bleeding, squirming mess of ingrates. He is pulled across the desert like a donkey dragging a cart up a mountain. No sooner had he got them out of Egypt than they started pining for the fruits and spices they left behind. Ingrates. God gave them manna and they want steak. God makes rocks bleed water and they beg for rivers. They're stiff-necked like the ox that used to resist his yoking in Midian. Unless the stupid beast relaxed, he could never get the yoke to settle tight against the neck. The dumb ox wore sores all day because of his own stubbornness. This tribe had been wandering for 40 years in the wilderness, with a yoke bouncing up and down on their stiff necks. It should have taken 11 days. The miserable journey, not 40 years. You are unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents. You have been rebellious against the Lord ever since I have known you. Easy, old man, let it go. Remember, these are kids standing here. Their parents did all of that, not these kids. But he can't help it. He's got 40 years worth of bile to unload, and the parents are no longer here to dump it on. Because of you, the Lord became angry with me also and said, you shall not enter it either. That's what really sticks in his craw. How come these kids get to prance into the land of milk and honey, while he, the great liberator, the one who bore them like a burden, who's stuck up for them when even God abandoned them, has to stand at the very edge of happiness and die? It's not fair. None of it's fair. I told you, but you would not listen. You rebelled against the Lord's command. The speech is not going well. Moses can sense it in the crowd, the women talking among themselves, the men looking down and shuffling their feet, the children drifting off to play. This is his last shot, and he's blowing it. Still, doesn't he have a right to say? Hasn't he earned it? Who cares how they respond right now? They've got to listen. One day they'll understand. One day they'll know how much they hurt him. I pleaded with the Lord, let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, that fine hill country in Lebanon, but because of you the Lord was angry with me and would not listen to me. No doubt the crowd understood the raves of the old man. Every last one of their parents lay buried in the Sinai sand, and soon Moses would join them, a shabby end of his life's service. He had known few joys, and surely they had not made it easy. Bringing him for their long list of problems each day. They had gossiped about him, mistrusted him, envied him. No one really liked Moses. How can you relate to such a man? 40 years your senior, a man who prefers tending sheep to tending people, who meets with God alone in a tent, and he must have known it. It was a long speech Moses gave, 3 speeches in all. And despite his tendency to lapse into rancor against his own ill fortune, he did pull himself together enough to get across the main message, which could be summarized in one word: remember. With the speeches in Deuteronomy, Moses established the great tradition of historical memory, a tradition his people, who became known as the Jews, have cherished ever since. Never forget. Try as we might, we can never undo the past. But still we must honor it by bearing witness, by remembering so as not to allow it to repeat. One would think, in view of all that had transpired, the centuries of slavery, the 10 plagues, the Red Sea miracle, the victories over surrounding tribes, the Hebrews would not need such a pedantic reminder. Forget God one generation after the Exodus? How could they ever doubt such a God? Yet Moses knew by intuition that the simple act of remembering would require daily acts of concentration. Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, failing to observe his commands, his laws, his decrees, that I am giving you to this day. However, when you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, when your herds and flocks grow large and your silver and gold increase, and all you have is multiplied, then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. He led you through the vast and dreadful desert and thirsty and waterless land. With its venomous snakes and scorpions, he brought you water out of hard rock. He gave you manna to eat in the desert, something your fathers have never known, to humble and to test you so that in the end it might go well with you. You may say to yourself, my power and my strength of my hands have produced this wealth in me. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your forefathers as it is today. Nothing apparently bothers God more than a simple act of being forgotten. During the years of wilderness wanderings, forced to depend on God daily, the Hebrews did not have the luxury of forgetting. God fed the Israelites, clothed them, planned their daily itinerary, and fought their battles. No Hebrew questioned the existence of God in those days, for he hovered before them in a thick cloud and a pillar of fire. Soon, however, God would withdraw from that smothering parental role. On the first day they ate produce from the promised land, the manna would stop. From then on, they must cultivate their own land and plant their own crops. They would build cities, fight wars, appoint a king. They would prosper and grow plump. They would trust their armies and chariots instead of their God, forgetting the lesson inflicted on almighty Egypt. They would discriminate against the poor and the aliens, forgetting that they were once both. In a word, they would forget God. These commandments I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, to give you a land with large, flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of good things you did not provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Then, when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Success, not failure, is the greatest danger facing any follower of God, as Moses knew well. He had traipsed around the desert for 40 years as a penalty for the Hebrews' inability to handle the success of the Exodus. Every significant downfall in his own life came when he seized power for himself, killing an Egyptian, smashing a rock in the desert, rather than relying on God. In contrast, perhaps his greatest military victory came when he played an almost slapstick role. No general at the head of the troops, Moses stood apart atop a nearby hill, raising his hands high like a religious zealot. As long as he reached out toward the God of Israel, the Israelites won. And whenever his hands sank down, the Amalekites won. By the end of the day, an exhausted Moses was sitting on a rock with each upstretched arm supported by a helper, God's strength in perfect weakness. And that's where we're going to end today. And hopefully you got something out of it. If you did, please leave a comment down in the comment section below or hit the like button. And we'll see you again next week.